Good morning and welcome to today's verse. Today's verse comes to us from the Gospel of John chapter 6, verse 20 and 21, and it says this: "But he said to them, 'It is I, do not be afraid.' Then they willingly received him into the boat, and immediately the boat was at land where they were going." Here we have a situation where the disciples were rowing and trying to get to the other side from where they were at. And where they were at before this was at the area where the Lord was preaching and teaching up to over 5,000, fed over 5,000, took up 12 baskets of fragments. And Matthew's gospel tells us that he made them get into the boat, go to the other side where he was to meet them later on. After the disciples got into the boat, the Lord dismissed the multitude and went up on the mountain to pray. And about the third or fourth watch, he was able to see the disciples in the middle of the sea. They hadn't gotten very far. Here we read about they've only gone 3 or 4 miles because a storm came up. And so it made it difficult for them to get to the other side. They were struggling. And the Lord comes to them walking on the water, and they see him. They are afraid. And here it appears that they're more afraid of the Lord because Matthew says that they thought he was a ghost. This is not the first time that the disciples and the Lord was in the sea, and the sea was boisterous. There was a storm that appeared. Remember, the first time that we read about it was when he was in the boat with the disciples and he fell asleep. And then the storm started, and the wind was blowing the storm, and the waves were pouring over into the boat. And the disciples were afraid that they were going to die because of the storm. And so they came to Jesus while he was sleeping and said, "Lord, do you not care that we're about to perish?" And Jesus got up and rebuked the wind and the waves, the storm, and there was a complete calm and peace. Here, he comes to them walking on the water. So it appears that they are more afraid of him than the storm itself. And so he says to them, "It is I. Do not be afraid." Notice that he says, "It is I." Literally what he says, "I am," identifying himself as the God that appeared, that always was, the one that even appeared to Moses when Moses asked the Lord, "Who is it that I should say has sent me?" When the children of Israel asked me, what is the name of the God that sent you? And he said to them, "Tell them that I am who I am, and that he is, and he always shall be God." And so in a storm, notice that the calm and the peace comes when Jesus is in the presence of the disciples. And so it is with all of those that believe and followers of the Lord, that when he is in your presence, there's peace, there's calm. Take your eyes off of the circumstances. Stop looking around and begin to look up and look within, knowing that the Lord is with you. And someone once said that, well, we're always in a storm. Either we're headed toward a storm, we're in a storm, or we're just coming out of a storm. That may, in some realities, it seems like life can be so difficult that is true. That even though God may not always deliver us from the storm, he can certainly deliver us through the storm, and we can know the peace of God, even when we're going through some terrible situation. And in this life, yes, there will be some things that will happen that will be very trying on you. I often say, I don't know how people make it in this life without the Lord. I don't normally look at the news very rarely do I look at the news, because every news cycle is going to have the same thing. Somebody got shot, a multitude has gotten shot, somebody's gotten stabbed, some tragic event has happened. A plane has crashed, a train has derailed, there's been some big car piled up. Something tragic is going to be there. The politicians are acting up, somebody lying about this, somebody lying about that. This is the news cycle. And so there's always some trouble in this life that is happening. So how do you make it without the Lord? I'm so thankful for God's presence in my life and for his presence in the lives of all those that believe that we can travel through this life and even the storms of life with the peace of God because he is in our presence. I pray that you would meditate upon this verse and that it would be a word of encouragement to you as you go throughout this day. I pray that you would have a wonderful day. It is the weekend. Get out and do something special with your family. Sunday morning is coming. Make sure that you enter into a place of worship with the saints of God. And then Monday morning, God's willing, we'll see you right back here. Yes, on today's verse. Amen.